been asked to give you a little bit of a quick update on what's been happening at Inner West Council in regards to WestConnex and the work that we're doing, particularly what kind of reports that I'm getting from residents who are already experiencing the impacts of, as Jenny said, acquisitions, construction in particular, in places like St Peters and Haberfield, how that might impact us here within Newtown, Camperdown and other parts of the Stanmore ward, and where we go from here. Since I've been on council, I've put through a number of motions to get us to take action on WestConnex, particularly when it comes to construction impacts such as noise and air pollution, which have already been very bad just down the road here in St Peters. I can recognise a number of faces of people directly impacted by that as we speak, and Haberfield, and I've got no reason to expect that the same kind of impacts won't be felt here if stage 3 proceeds with the amount of tunnelling works that are predicted for parts of Newtown, as well as the rather large construction site that's planned for Camperdown, just over Parramatta Road. As a result of the motions that have been passed, there's been a number of actions that Council has now taken. We've written to the Premier and all of the relevant ministers multiple times to raise these issues in a very serious and formal manner. We've contacted all the local, state and federal MPs to ask for them to do whatever they can to assist our efforts in this regard. We've formally asked the EPA to conduct an audit into WestConnex's construction impacts. We're also in the process of setting up an environmental health working group which will work on issues such as air quality and noise impacts. And we've also contacted all of the councils across the WestConnex route with a view to setting up a working group to work on the project together. There's also potentially going to be a $250,000 fund set up to work on air quality issues across the Inner West in general, as well as support for citizen air quality monitoring initiatives. And for the last few years, we've also had a dedicated WestConnex unit operating within council who, apart from doing various analyses of the project, also actively support residents and follow up complaints that we're receiving as well, and add that extra voice of advocacy. I know one area that's likely to be of interest to people here, particularly those who will have the tunnelling works happening directly under their houses, is the fact that Inner West Council has recently resolved to start offering a dilapidation report service. Now, at the moment, the scope of that service is we're going to start with people who are eligible for the WestConnex dilapidation reports, and that's generally anybody who's within 50 metres of tunnelling or a surface construction site, so that our report will basically be like a backup plan for that. But I've spoken to council officers about this because I know one thing that I've had, bit of feedback that I've had from residents who are already affected is that the scope of those reports doesn't go wide enough, and the people outside of that 50 metre zone also experience impacts. So our staff have indicated that they are open to expanding that service. It all just depends on the amount of demand we receive for it. So what I would say is if you are interested in getting those reports, do get in touch with council, have a chat to the officers and find out about it. And bear in mind that those reports are at their most effective if they're done right before the construction starts, because you want that time stamp to be right beforehand. I should add too that the advice we've received from our legal team is that these reports are not going to be as thorough as the photographs and so forth you can take yourself around your house, because there's a lot of places such as roof cavities that those companies and services will not get into. So by all means, do the same thing. Get the photography done around your house if you think you're going to be impacted. Trust before the works start. Make sure they're time-stamped so you've got that evidence base. And I know you're going to hear from Kathy later just how important it is. And I'm already getting reports from residents who have experienced cracking that can very definitely be linked to WestConnex construction. But when they put their claims in, they're getting denied the repair costs, all very sadly predictable. Traffic impacts are obviously another big concern for our local area, and I was just chatting to somebody today who was actually asking, do we think there's any point in trying to stop the third stage now if all that's going to do is dump traffic out of the St Peters interchange onto here? Now, we've done some traffic analyses at council. I've also looked through the traffic, the predictions that are in the environmental impact statements, which I like to refer to as the most optimistic ones our money can buy. And look, without getting into the very detail of which streets will be impacted, I think it's fair to say that whether on stage 3 gets built or not, if WestConnex becomes operational, we're going to be seeing a big impact on our local streets and that traffic. You know, and Jess will no doubt touch upon later about how Euston Road alone is looking at something like 50 to 60,000 extra cars and trucks a day based on the RMS projections, which is a pretty crappy result. I think we can all agree for something that is a multi-billion-dollar congestion buster, supposedly. And if you look at Parramatta Road, obviously that's had a huge increase in traffic ever since the tolls were put back on the M4, and I've got no reason to believe that we're not going to see the same kind of thing as people dodge the tolls around here as well. And I think we need to remain particularly vigilant on this in this area because of the potential threat to King Street. Now, obviously, the only reason the government actually, if you look at their traffic predictions, the only reason they predict that WestConnex won't have a big impact on King Street is because it is already at capacity in terms of traffic. And of course, what's the quickest way to increase capacity? It's the clearways. The big public backlash, driven by a lot of people in this room, is the only reason the government has said that they're not going to do that, or they have no current plans, one of their favourite sayings. But it's always, they'll never take it off the table completely, and as a community, I think we really have to stay on that. And finally, what can you do to get, if you need action from council or your councillors, our role is largely advocacy-based, which is not to say it isn't powerful, because everyone in this room knows how much of a difference that's made. If you're impacted by construction and need to make complaints, I would always encourage you to pass them on to council. Our WestConnex unit, I'm happy to receive those as well. We can help you follow those up, and we also keep our own complaints register, and we use that information when we have not just our public forums with the authorities, but also the private meetings we have with planning, with health, with environment, to really push for better treatment for our residents. And look, I'll just finish up by saying, look, how much I appreciate everybody keeping up the fight. I know, you know, I've known a lot of you, I've met a lot of you over the years on this. It has been a long slog, but as Jenny said, it's been one that is not without, you know, that has come with its successes. The very fact that we've gone from having, you know, this being the jewel in the New South Wales government's infrastructure crown, actually not just the New South Wales government, because Tony Abbott was very involved in the early days, to being something they're so ashamed of that no minister would front the media when they announced that the stage 3 had been approved. I think that has been the result of a huge pushback from the community, and that has been community driven. It has not been, for the large part, politician driven, particularly not from our major parties. So keep up the fight. I can guarantee you I will be with you all the way. I know Jenny and Jess are exactly the same. Yeah, and so thank you for doing that.